Hey everyone, this is my starter guide for the Executioner, aka Pyramid Head. We're going to be going through a lot of basics, so this is especially good for newer players who want to pick them up. Let's get to it. So Pyramid Head is an average killer in terms of attributes. He's got the 4.6 movement speed, the 32 meter tear radius, and he's tall so that you can see him over shorter loops. Alright, so let's take a look at what I feel like are the stats for Pyramid Head. In terms of mobility, he's got nothing special going on. He's just standard movement speed, nothing in his abilities to help him there. So it's just a flat out 5 average. Utility. He has a ton of utility with his cages and his trails. So you can save lots of time with caging and his Mori. You can area denial. Overall, his ability is very good at utility. And likewise at chase, his ability is fantastic. You're pretty much guaranteed a hit if you get them while they're doing their animation, if they're dropping a pallet or going through a window. So he's really, really good in chase, as well as zoning with his trails. In terms of pressure, he doesn't really have a whole lot. You could make the argument that his cages give a bit of pressure, but you got to be careful not to put the cages pretty much right on top of the survivor, so it's good to keep tabs on them. I'm just going to briefly go over his teachable perks. In general, they're not really that good. But Force Penance, whenever someone takes a protection hit, they suffer broken status. Trail of Torment, that's whenever you kick a generator, you get undetectable, but they can stop that by just tapping the gen. Deathbound, that's whenever a survivor heals another, they scream, and they get oblivious if they get far enough apart from them. In general, not great perks. Kind of fun to use though. So let's break down his power really quick here. Let's start with the Punishment of the Damned, which is his M2 ranged attack. So it's 8 meters long, without add-ons that is, and about a meter wide. And you can imagine it moves kind of like a wave, so it has travel time. So up close, it's going to be attack quicker than it will when it's at, say, the 8 meters. So you got to keep that in mind. Now this attack is actually faster than an M1 attack, which is 3.25 seconds. Now the Punishment of the Damned is only 2.25 seconds, so it's actually beneficial to use that instead of a basic attack if you can guarantee a hit. What's nice about his power is that it can hit through walls and objects, as well as hitting multiple survivors at once. Now let's talk about when to use his power. So basically anytime a survivor is locked in an animation, so whether they're dropping a pallet, they're vaulting either a window or a pallet, so any animation lock is a perfect time to use it. As well as going through bottlenecks, so that's long narrow hallways, doorways, and another aspect is when unhooking. So if you know that a survivor is going for an unhook, you can actually get a double hit. And what you want to do is wait for the hooked survivor's feet to get on the ground for about 2 seconds, maybe a little less. And that'll get you a double hit. Now, if you have an attack already going and you get stunned by a pallet, your animation will still go through and you'll actually still get the hit, even though you got stunned by the pallet. Now you gotta watch with this ability because it can go down slopes and staircases, but it cannot go up, and it cannot cross gaps. So if there's like an empty space between an area, it'll actually just stop your attack. There's also a slight vertical hitbox, but it's not really enough to make a huge difference most of the time. Okay, so let's go over the other part of his power, which is his trails. So when you're using a trail, you go to 92% speed for 1 second at the start of the animation and at the end of the animation, and then 110% in between that. Now, trails stay in the environment for 75 seconds at base without add-ons, and you can place a lot of trails. I wouldn't worry about placing too many, and besides, you don't want to spend all your time placing trails. So what happens when a survivor goes through the trail? Well, they get tormented. And what this means is barbed wire will follow the tormented survivor, which is a little bit good at for tracking. They also get killer instinct for a few seconds after they initially step on the trail. Now, when a survivor gets downed when tormented, the killer can send them to the cage. And this is usually a good idea because it sends them all the way across to the other side of the map. So if they're in one corner, it'll send them all the way to the next. And this takes 2 seconds to send them to the cage. Meanwhile, while the survivors are on their second hook and ready to be killed, you have a Mori, and this is the quickest Mori in the game. It takes 3 seconds to kill them. Now, the survivors can get rid of the torment by unhooking someone in a cage. So they both will lose their torment if they have them, if that happens. So let's talk about where to use it, because you don't want to use your trails just all willy-nilly. You want to be strategic about them, and you don't really want to go out of your way to place them either. So certain high traffic areas, this is maybe where survivors are almost guaranteed going to be, and they can't really avoid it. At first, if you're patrolling gens and stuff, you can put a couple in loops, maybe save you a little bit of time. But you really just don't want to be slowed down by it a whole lot. Another strategy is that you can put it over down survivors. That's if they have a DS, if they didn't just get out of a cage, or there's someone nearby that could give a flashy save, and outside of lockers. At least you want them to get tormented if they're going to at least get away from you. So the main use of his trails would probably be at choke points and in loops. So you basically want to make it so survivors either have to go through it or they'll totally avoid them altogether and move to a different loop, and hopefully you can catch up then. Some other good spots is you can try and hide them in grass. It's not usually a great idea. It doesn't always work. As well as you cannot place the trails near generators, hooks, exit gates, or on stairs. However, you can place them on slopes. One note is when survivors step on the trail, it actually disappears, so that could be a strategy as a survivor to help counter that. Okay, so I'm going to briefly go over his add-ons. In general, his add-ons are very underwhelming. The only ones usually worth running are his range ones, and the ones that make the trail stay longer in the environment. Meanwhile, his purple ones are okay, they're not bad in terms of purples, I suppose. And his iridescents, we're not even going to go over because they are not good at all. So to start to summarize things up, let's go over his strengths and weaknesses. So his strengths. He saves a ton of time with his cage and Mori. He prevents unhooking perks with caging, so borrowed time, decisive strike, anything affected by unhooking. Does not work with his cages. He has great area control and denial, and he's great at loops. His weaknesses. He has nothing to help his mobility. Same thing with survivors. With your perks, it doesn't work. So barbecue, make your choice. they don't work when you cage them. So keep that in mind. And he's got a pretty steep skill curve. Alright guys, I'll leave some tips, and thanks for watching. Hope it helps. Please remember to subscribe if you like the content. Bye.